Hello and welcome to Roguelike Radio. This is episode 54 when we're talking about game jams. Talking today we have
Zapa,
Michael Brough,
Ido Yehieli,
and Sos.
and Darren Grey. Now, game jams, for those that aren't aware, have nothing to do with Jam the Preserve. They're, how would you describe them, Ido?
making game quickly.
They're making games quickly.
And with silly ideas normally, but that's
Often with
optional.
silly ideas. The 7-day roguelike challenge is a game jam of sorts, where everyone, during a period of time, is all making a game in 7 days. And a few of us here have done 7-day roguelikes. But there are a lot of other game jams around, and 7 days is actually quite long for a game jam compared to most game jams. The most famous of the game jams is the Ludum challenges, which normally 48 hours to make a game, and I think there's 2 a year or something like that, and there's been quite a few by now, and they get over 1,000 participants, or 1,000 successful participants regularly. But there's a lot of other jams go on, and there's also jams that happen in person. People meet up, and some people form into teams and jam together. So it's got a bit of a feel like with in the music industry, where people jam together and you get, a few people playing different instruments. But in the game scene, you get maybe a coder and an artist and a musician all come together and jam a game together. So you get some interesting mixes, and quite often they have a theme or some sort of restriction around them. Just to check how involved you all been with sort of jamming and such. Zapa, have you been in many jams?
Actually, I started jamming in 2011 with Ludum 22, and since then I've been in like 4 other jams.
And you were in the Fuck This Jam one,
Yeah,
which was very recent. You made a roguelike for it?
Actually, 2D shooter with the roguelike elements. I didn't get to finish the procedural dungeon generation.
Okay. Michael, what about yourself?
I think my first jam was a TIGJam in Cambridge 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. And I was completely baffled, really, how people could turn out a game so quickly. But since then, I've been to several more of these jams and gotten the hang of it, I guess.
Yeah, the TIGJams, worth mentioning, I've been to only one of them myself. In Cambridge every year, there's a sort of organised 2 or 3 day jam, but within those 2 or 3 days, there's lots of little mini jams where everyone gives a suggestion for a theme. 3 theme ideas get drawn from a hat, and then you gotta make a game based on that theme in 3 hours. So very, very intense. 3 hours is not a long time. And then, after you've done that one, in another hour, there's another one. So you make 3 games one day and 3 games the next day. It's really intense, but a lot of fun. People make a lot of weird stuff generally, and yeah. Ido, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I've also been to a couple of TIGJams, I think like 4 or 5 of them in Berlin and in Sweden. And I've done the several days roguelike jams, which I think it was the first jams I started doing, and I participated in like 5 of them, and I think I succeeded in 3. Actually, I've created 5 games, but like I think 2 of these were outside of the time constraints. Like I think one of them I did them like a week before because I had to take a flight or something like that, and one of them took me 8 days instead of 7. And I did Ludum a couple of times. I've did the Indie Buskers game jam with Sos and a few other guys and girls, where we were live streaming it the whole 48 hours as we were making the games. And I just noticed that Tim Schafer's company Double Fine is now doing the same thing basically as we did in the Indie Buskers. I just noticed it now, and yeah, I really liked it. I've done like I think even this year alone, like 2012, probably made something like 6 or 7 jam games. So yeah, I really like game jams, and I recommend anybody, everyone that likes making games to participate in jams.
Sos, I think if you go on your website, there's a long list of games you've made. I presume a lot of them are in jams.
Yeah, most of them are made on game jams. I have like the first game jam I ever did was now it's non-existent. It was called 72 hours game making challenge or competition. Yeah, competition. It wasn't like game jams previously. They were called compos mostly, and they were like now they are called game jams because most of them don't have voting, and the compos was like there was voting. There was always a winner, and it was like 2006. So yeah, I did this. I first found about like stuff like game jams and making games in like 3 days. And then I found out about Ludum there and lots of TIGJam compos. But TIGJam compos take a month. They are like, they weren't shorter than a month. Somewhere like 2 months. And yeah, it's not a game jam as such. It's like, yeah, it's like a competition where you have a month. So yeah, I did a lot of Ludum there, and I done a lot of like super tight game jams, like Popovkast. Popovkast is like an imaginary game jam where some of the people, you just go to an IRC channel and scream Popovkast, and you assemble people who are drunk to make a video game within 1 hour or 2 hours to a given topic. Yeah, and it's like you have to be drunk. When you are not drunk, it's called a virgin Popovkast, and it's a shame. And yeah, and like the shortest game jam is like the 0 hour game jam that I'm hosting since the last year. Well, it's actually a 1 hour game jam. It's a game jam where you have to make a game during the daylight saving time end, where the clocks are shifting back from 3 a.m. back to 2 a.m. So we are starting at 2 a.m. and going all the way back to 2 a.m. So yeah, it's actually an hour, but I think for me, it's a great feeling when I make a game. I start at 2 a.m. and it is 2 a.m. again, and I am playing the game that I should have been starting to make.
Yeah. I did a few 7-day roguelikes, but the first, outside the sort of roguelike sphere, the first game jam I ever saw, like really properly knew about, was the 0 hour game jam. When I heard about that, I was like, that's such a cool idea. I've got to try doing that. And yeah, last year I did that after coming home drunk from a Halloween party, dressed as a priest with fake blood all over me, and coded a very quick roguelike in 0 hours. It was quite a fun sort of achievement thing to do. I've also, earlier this year, the first time I went to like a physical in-person game jam was there was the Molyjam, where you have to make a game based on the tweets of the parody Twitter account of Peter Molyjam. And there's also some funny ideas from that, and there's lots of weird games came out of that. I made a small roguelike about a young boy trying to avoid guards. And then went to the TIGJam earlier this year in Cambridge. That was quite fun. The most recent jam was a thing called Fuck This Jam. The idea was to make a game in a genre that you traditionally don't like. So I made an action RPG. Anyone who's heard my opinions of Diablo knows that I don't like action RPGs very much. So I made the most intensely clicky game I've ever made. But yeah, I really love game jams. They're really fun. There's so much good things about game jams. I mean, the 7-day roguelikes are a good example of how you can get some really different, interesting stuff come out.
You should do the Ludum there. Like, I think the Ludum there is the biggest game jam around. Like for now.
Yeah, it's bigger than, I think it got bigger than what was it called, the shitty one, Global Game Jam.
Yeah, Global Game Jam. Is the Global Game Jam bigger than Ludum there?
It used to be, but I think now Ludum Dare is bigger.
The problem The problem I have with Ludum Dare is the theme gets announced at the very start.
Yeah,
And
but like there's a like wide history of roguelikes for Ludum Dare. Like Notch is a notorious roguelike creator for Ludum Dare. I think like all of his Ludum Dare games were roguelikes.
It's just one of the things that I like with a jam is that you know a jam is coming up, right? And you've got all sorts of ideas in your head before the jam starts, and you sort of, as you get closer and closer to the start date, these ideas sort of crystallize, and you end up with a reasonably good plan in your head. And it's the design element happens over a period of weeks, and then you get the fast implementation. And I really enjoy that.
I think you can quite often use the theme to somehow make one of the games that you are thinking of anyway. I mean, it's mostly meant to like put an edge to it. Like, okay, so how am I making this tactical RPG whatever, but that it's gonna be about cows or about periods or whatever.
I remember the last Ludum Dare one was Tiny Worlds, I think was the theme, and I thought there's no game idea I've got in my head. Cause, we all have lots of game ideas sitting at the back of our head. Well, there's nothing I could do with that. I just thought, all right, never mind, I'll go to bed instead.
Well, but it's like great. I think you don't know what are you going to make in like 48 hours, and it's like the design and the production and like everything that comprises making a game blends together. So you don't like design a game, then program a game, then make assets, and then make sounds. You make it all like is a like draft. You make a design of the game that is a game itself after 48 hours.
It's just one of the things I can understand the appeal of it, but one of the things I like is coming up with like quite a concrete plan and then following through on that plan. For me, usually the game jam period itself is a period of learning to code, because I'm not a very good coder, so every game jam is me finding out new things to do. So there's a hell of a lot of experimentation, a hell of a lot of crashing my computer, that sort of thing. So the design side, I don't really have time during the jam to do the design side so much.
I've done some jams where I've tried to make a board game, so I haven't done the programming side of it at all. It's just pure design, and that they haven't worked out very well. But you could, if you don't know going into it what idea you're going to make, then you're doing the whole process of designing the game in a short time to see what comes out of that.
I mean, for me, ideas-wise, I like to let an idea settle. You come up with an idea, and then over a period of time, that idea changes. And you can't just rapidly force yourself to have good ideas. You kind of, you need to let them stew a bit.
It's not about good ideas. Game jams are not about making good games. They're about making games.
I like making good games. Well, pretending to.
I find sometimes when you let an idea stew for too long, it acquires too much baggage, and then when you actually try to make it, and you find out, the basic game mechanic I was thinking of isn't all that fun, but I've got all these extra things I've been thinking about that were meant to go along with it, and that's kind of upsetting. So I find sometimes it's good to minimize the gap between having the idea and having a playable prototype to just rapidly churn out something that you can see whether the idea even works and whether it's fun to play, and get a feel for what it wants to be rather than what you want it to be.
Right. Yeah, I think this is really hitting the nail on the head, because I think like most people, I really love game design, and I just do the coding because you have to do coding in order to make computer games. It's not like something like if I had my way, I would have just like brain interfaced with the computer and somehow made the game design work without coding. But I think like really coming to a position where there is no friction or minimal friction to the implementing part of your game ideas is the number one thing that's gonna make you a better game designer. And the more of these crazy game jams you make, just the better you get at removing that friction of implementing your idea. And it really doesn't matter if it's implementing it in like the most minimal form. It's even better that it's implementing in the most minimal form, because then the only reason the game is going to be good, if it will be good, is because the base mechanic was a good idea, right? Because you don't have time to make it look nice or whatever.
Well, I'm like completely different. I love coding. Sometimes I start a game jam and I just start a code, especially if it's like a 2-hour or a 1-hour or 3 hours game jam where you don't have time to sit and ponder about the ideas. I just start coding and start actually making the game, having no idea what will come out of it. So yeah, I think like someone said that when I design a game, the actual code is the actual design. I don't know. I never considered myself a game designer.
One of the things for me with game jams is that you've got a very, very tight deadline. And, for me as a hobbyist, I make games in my spare time, it's often hard to actually build up the motivation to make something. Whereas when you have a specific challenge, then you're much more motivated, and there's other people doing it. There's a sort of social aspect, even if it's just an online thing. Knowing that other people are doing it at the same time as you is kind of
and just having a deadline.
But yeah, just having a deadline is such a big thing for making you go out and do something. I failed to reach the deadline of my 7-day roguelike this year, and that was 6 months ago. I have not done a heck of a lot of work on it since, even though I keep meaning to finish it. But just having that deadline is so much more motivating. I did so much more work in that 1 week than I've done in the 6 months since.
Oh, well, that's the basic idea with game jams. Like, you start working on something and you actually have a deadline in order to finish it, and it pushes you to actually finish your game or your prototype, allowing you to experiment it. And, well, you won't actually lose any time working on it because you get it to an end, and if it's great, you can pass it on or keep working on it.
Yeah, what I was trying to say, I had exactly the same experience. Like every 7-day I'll make, I say, oh, this was like a really cool game. Now I'm gonna do like version 2 of it, would fix up all the bugs and like add all the features that didn't have to add and so on. And like I've made like 4 or 5 of these 7-day hours, and not once did I actually then continue working on the game afterwards, even though I thought about it like every single time and made like a huge list of all the stuff I need to fix in the game and all the stuff I need to add to the 7-day RL that's gonna make it better. And like not once did I actually work on it after the 7-day RL period ended.
I've done bug fixes, but never content additions.
Not more than that. Yeah.
Or at least only the most minor touches. Even games which I keep meaning just to bring up to date, so that slightly, because over time I've learned extra little things, extra polished things that would be easy to just throw on top, little interface things, or even just getting to run better on modern computers. No, I've not gone back and done that, even though I keep meaning to. But yeah, it's when you're working on something new, that's so much more fun than polishing something old.
There's another great thing like with game jams is that you get feedback for your actual game quite fast. Like I've been working in the industry as a game designer for other companies, and I really hate it when you have to spend like months working on a game and you actually get no interaction with the players or the people you're making your game for. And yeah, with Ludum there, I made a game 48 hours and there was the community telling me, okay, yeah, that's nice or that's great. And it gave me motivation to keep working on it afterwards. Or it actually told me fast enough if my idea was great or if it needed improvement, and I would keep that in mind for other games that I would start making.
Absolutely. I've done a lot of jams where I just made something by myself quickly, and then haven't released it because I intended to do more with it. But when I've done something like a 7-day roguelike or a TIGJam, and I release it and show it to other people, if then they say, people like it, then that gives the motivation to actually take it further if it's something that needs to be taken further.
The other thing for me is a lot of these jams have some sort of theme or restriction to them, and it's good. They say that restriction breeds creativity. That it really spurs on creativity. When you're forced to work within a confined space, you will think of all sorts of new things than if you just had a blank canvas. And I find that's very true with game jams. When you are given this theme of whatever it may be, like with Fuck This Jam, it was create a game that you don't like, or in an area that you traditionally don't like, and it makes you think very differently than you would normally think if you're just told go and make a cool game. It's not just a creativity thing, but it's also a challenge thing. There's that incentive of, what can I do with this? I'm forced into this box. What can I build out of this? How can I really make the most of this? Plus, it really makes you think differently. It makes you think of completely novel and new things.
I want to take a bit of an aside here and talk about the dangers of game jams, or rather, one danger that I see in it. Basically, it's not really danger, but a little bit, because for me, I know that when I work on like huge projects, or don't have to be huge, but have to like even moderately sizable projects, it can get very, very uncomfortable sometimes, and you don't I slave on it for days or weeks or months or whatever, and I'm not sure if this thing's gonna work out. Is it gonna be good? Is it obviously I do like playtesting all the time, so I know if it's like people will like it or not, but still you can never really tell for sure. And game jams are like they're like easy victories. They're like, oh yeah, I'm making a game, and like 2 days later you have a game. And for me it was kind of like for a short while addictive to always have these small victories. And it happened to me this year, like the first half of this year, I was just making like game jams all the time. I made like 6-7 of them till like from January till June or something. And I think like long term I really want to make games that are just pretty significant on their own accord, and that can be quite difficult if you're not investing more time and effort into them than you would in game jams. And because these small victories are relatively easy to get, I like that's probably one of the main reasons why like the first half of this year I haven't even really worked on any game that like if I'm honest about it, it's just like really something that I'm gonna even remember like a year from now. And I did improve that later after I've decided that I've binged on game jams. I've like stuffed myself full of these game jams. Now I'm gonna start working on some bigger grand designs, and I've been doing that like for the past couple of months. So I just want to put that out there as like the other side.
Yeah, I've started to feel like when I spend a month working on a game, I haven't released something for a month. People are going to forget who I am. Need to hurry up and get something out.
On the flip side of that, I have heard people who, especially people who work in the sort of commercial industry, say that a nice thing about game jams is a chance to kind of let their hair down. That they're working on these big projects where it could be months and months and months before they ever see a release. And it's nice to work on something that's A, non-commercial, B, not treated too seriously, and C, is over with pretty quickly. But I can see what you're saying there about if you do too much, then obviously it's a bad addiction to have when you're relying on bigger commercial projects to actually get you through life.
It's not even a commercial consideration. It's just like consideration of me as a game designer and game developer. I just want to make like the best games ever, right? It's not about needing for these games to make money. It's just for me needing to make these games.
Yeah, my life goal is to live off game jams. Like I'd love to do game jams all the time and release like I don't know hundreds of games a year. Even though like do like shit games like awful, I would be like great. Who cares if they're awful if there's 100 of them.
So you're saying 100 terrible experiences are equal to one great experience?
No, I'm just saying that we should make like indie Buskers a regular show and like properly live off that.
How much did indie Buskers get this year?
I think the first one, you mean like in terms of money?
Yeah.
The first one I think was something like $6,000, and the second one was like 2,000 euros or something. So second one was less highly publicized on our side, so it made a bit less money.
But it's not a lot when split between all the Buskers, is it?
Yeah, it's more than it's a lot more than I expected to get. Like I don't think anybody really got into it. Like definitely not the first one. I don't think anybody got into it expecting to even like make enough money to even pay for like the electricity that your computer is using these 48 hours, and so it's definitely like was a pleasant surprise there.
I mean, it's the other thing that sort of touched on is that this is I don't even know how to articulate it properly, but it is generally just quite fun. A lot of these, especially something like the 0 Hour Game Jam and some of the other ones where maybe the whatever restriction there is quite a weird restriction. The novelty factor and the sort of strangeness of it makes it that much more compelling. You're doing something that's very different from the norm, and it feels quite fun to be doing this.
Yeah, it's actually I think is a game genre of compo games and jam games. Like there is something they all have in common, even though they don't.
Yeah, sort of. A lot of them are quite non-serious with very cartoony or stupid graphics, or sort of non-too-serious themes, non-too-serious graphics, and so on. And they've all got kind of that cheap indie feel to them.
Well, the time constraints are really strong restriction. You have to think about what can I do graphically in this time, and I've got this idea for a feature that'll take 3 days to code. I can't do that. What can I do that gets the same effect, but I can code in half an hour? You have to spend extra time on design to reduce the time on implementation.
And sometimes this pays off in making a better game.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just makes you focus, and having that focus improves the game.
One thing I find is that every jam game I've done, I've learned something from it. I have a series of tattoos on my left arm, one @ symbol for every roguelike I've made, and most of them are jam games. And I remember talking to someone about, someone saw it, and it was at the TIGJam actually, and he said, "What, you even get them for jam games?" As if jam games aren't a serious thing. You shouldn't get yourself tattooed just for making a jam game. And he's probably right. I'm probably just mad, but for me, every single game there, I've learned something serious from. Even the 0 Hour Game Jam one that I did last year. Even though it was an incredibly simple roguelike that I just made was drunk in an hour. I specifically learned things I specifically was trying to have a completely minimalistic interface on it. And I've used a very similar interface system actually on all the games I've done since. So, even on a 1 hour thing, having the restriction of that meant I also restricted myself in a lot of the design and the interface and learned things from that. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned. What's that?
Did you get a mouse cursor tattoo for your TIGJam action RPG?
Oh, I'm not sure what to do about that. I will have to add it somehow, but I don't know if an @ symbol is appropriate.
No, a mouse cursor.
Yeah, it would look a bit odd next to all the @ symbols.
I wonder.
That's a lame excuse.
I wonder how I would look like if I did that. I would be like covered all over in a few years from now.
You should do that. That'd be so cool. If you got the avatar of every single game you've made all over you.
Yeah,
cool.
but I think like what you say is actually true. Like you can experiment on a lot of ideas. Like I made a lot of 1-hour games too, and all of them are different genres that I have never ever touched apart from these games. Like I made a shmup for in 1 hour. I made a like top-down shooter for 1 hour. I made a platformer. I made like really odd genres or not odd, but ones that I didn't do. And you can experiment without having anything to lose. You can like, hey, can I do that? Oh yeah, I can. Oh yeah, I can't. You can like test yourself, and as you said, also learn new stuff.
Plus, it's not so bad if you fail. I tried to do the 0-hour game jam this year, and I realized 45 minutes in that the engine I was using didn't support the 2,000 actors I had active in the game that required the game to work. So it was like taking 10 seconds around to run, which was surprising. But it meant that my entire game premise that I'd been coding for 45 minutes, as soon as I tried running it, it's technically working, but it's not feasible to make a game from. But I'd only invested 45 minutes, and obviously a bunch of design thought had gone into it. But I wasn't sad to say, oh well, didn't make it. Yeah, and even on the longer jams, it's not so bad when I've had similar things with other jams where in a 3-hour jam, 2 hours in, you realize that you're not going to make it. It's just not going to work out. But it's easy enough to shrug off and say, oh well, and chalk it up to a learning experience. So how many people have been to physical jams where you actually meet up with people?
Global Game Jam. I think like it's the biggest event-driven game jam. Like the actual spot. I think you can actually do it from home, but I never heard anyone does it. Like everyone goes to a spot. The essence of it, like, it's not only make a game, it's make a game with people, with like people around, not only on the internet.
Mm.
Yeah, I did Global Game Jam, but also the TIGJams that I've been to in Berlin and in Sweden were physical.
And Michael, you've been to the TIGJam in Cambridge, haven't you?
Yeah, and the big jam in Berlin as well.
Okay. Zapa, what about yourself? You been to any?
No, I've never been to an actual physical game jam. I've been to a coder jam, and like 70% of the people there were actually making games, but it wasn't a game jam under the definition of a game jam.
Okay. I remember the first physical one I went to was the Molyjam last April. And it was such a fantastic feeling. Like you get to meet people, obviously, and you're chatting to people and you're coding away, and it's quite easy to ignore all the action around you and get stuck into the code. But the best thing was at the end when they got everyone to get up and show off their game on a projector, and everyone gets a round of applause and stuff, and a lot of people's games were a little bit buggy, but everyone had something interesting to show. And it was a fantastic feeling. Getting to show off a roguelike to a crowd of 30 people was quite weird an experience. I've never... most of my experiences with showing roguelikes off to people have been to show it off to 1 or 2 people and them going, is that a game? But getting to have an audience interested in what you've just spent 5 hours doing was quite cool. It's a really fantastic atmosphere, and everyone's got the same sort of geeky humor and things like that, and yeah, it's a nice community feeling to it, and you can meet people, make friends, that sort of thing. Especially if anyone's active on Twitter. I mean, Twitter is one of the best sort of social communities for knowing about jams, in my experience. And it's quite cool to put a face to the name of a lot of the people that you interact with on Twitter or through other online communities.
Yeah, I actually joined Twitter because of Ludum there. Because the website is like pretty integrated with Twitter. It's like, hey, I should have an account there.
I joined Twitter because of the 0 Hour Game Jam last year. That's when I first opened the account. And then when I went to post my game after I finished, Twitter suddenly locked me out and said I was a spam bot. It's like, no! I just want to link my game. Give me my account back.
I actually don't like the physical game. I've been to a couple of them. I don't like the physical game jams that much. I much prefer working from the comfort of my home. I mean, I think it's enough work to actually make a game in like 4 hours or whatever. That, to add on top of that, working on like a tiny netbook in a room, smelling of armpits, and eating fast food or whatever it is. Maybe that's more telling about my experience and doing game jams than generally. But if I can help it, I prefer doing like these online game jams like the 7-day roguelikes and the Ludum hours.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's the actual meetup game jams are like more fun and less making a game, while the internet game jams are about making a game and actually a bit less fun. But it's also fun because you can make a game more efficient.
It would make sense to go to a real life game jam just to meet people and not have any plans of making a game at all.
Yeah.
I found with the TIGJam, there's several 3-hour ones, and some of them I sat out, and some of them I did a few bits of art on, and some of them I took part on. It was nice to sit out a few and just go and talk with other people, have a look at what other people are doing, give feedback, do a little play testing for them, that sort of thing. And sort of go about it socially rather than treating it as a series of consecutive challenges that you must complete. It's a very light-hearted atmosphere. But yeah, there is an armpit factor. And there usually is a sort of junk food factor as well. But yeah, thankfully the TIGJam was in a reasonably airy room.
And maybe in like winter or something when there's... Actually, in winter it's worse because then all the windows are closed.
Yeah, summer's better and you have open windows. And the nice thing also was sort of at the end of it, everyone went to a pub and played ninjas for a while. That was quite fun. Plus, you don't just talk about jam games and stuff. People are generally showing off what they're working on in general. It's quite cool to interact, show off your own work, see other people's things, see stuff, work in progress that, quite frankly, for a lot of indie stuff might never see the light of day, but it's quite cool to see these different things.
Yeah, it's a good place to get feedback from other game designers on what you've been working on.
There are lots of other sort of indie meetup things, but game jams actually do get a good critical mass to them.
Well, actually, game jams also help meeting new people of other artists or designers. Like when you're a coder and a designer and you're not really bright when it comes to art, the days before a game jam, there's a lot of people on Twitter and on the IRC channels finding our team partner, and it allows you to actually find the possible collaboration that could work for the future.
Yeah, that's true. Have any of you got any sort of collaboration, things like that?
Well,
Sure.
After TIGJam, during TIGJam, I actually met an artist, Thomas Noppers, and I spoke to him so he can help me out with the art for the game. And now that Game Jam ended, we're keeping in touch, looking for like other projects we can work on together.
Yeah, I've had a couple of collaborations on game jams. Trying to think about it now. I'm not sure I've actually made another game with one of them. I'm pretty sure the guy I made the global game jam with, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore after jam. But yeah, I've made a couple of collaborations. I can't say any of them actually led up to any sort of like collaborative relationship with the person I've collaborated with.
Yeah, I made for the recent Fact This Jam. I made a game with the Zoe Quinn. It was like a Twitter thing. She was looking for a programmer. I was looking for an artist, and I thought, hey, let's make a game together. And we made an awful match one clicker.
I played it. It is awful. It's beautifully awful.
It is.
I've done some art for people in game jams. Generally, really, really bad art. I can't say it's made me collaborate and become a great artist in fantastic indie projects, but it's forced a degree of socialization that I am not used to as a lone roguelike programmer. You know, it forces you into this social situation, which a lot of us are lone wolves, or sit in our own rooms doing our own coding behind our computers. A lot of us don't normally get into these very social situations that much. And it's nice to have a pressure cooker sort of making you do something slightly social and getting a bit more friendly with people. And it's nice for forming bonds with people. Even if there's not going to be a collaboration thing out of it, you're making friends.
Or enemies.
Or enemies, in
my
your case. Yeah. Well done, Ido.
But I agree. Just like I used the 7-day roguelike jam originally, like in 2008 or something, in order to finally push me to actually finish a game. The same way you can also use it to push you to finally collaborate with other people, which generally speaking is very positive experience. So like if you've only made like games by yourself, you should definitely at least try to make a game with another person just to see what it's like.
Bringing around the subject to roguelikes, I'm surprised I don't see roguelikes done for game jams more often. Because, Sos, you mentioned that there's a few get made for Ludum there, but in general, from what I've seen, there's not a lot of roguelikes made. And, roguelikes are so good in so many ways. You don't have to bother making graphics or sound or any of these things. You don't have to bother thinking up an interesting plot.
But I think it's harder to make them actually fun to play on like a very minimalist level. Like Michael did it really well with Zaga 33, which is super minimalist.
Mm-hmm.
But like normally, if you make like some sort of platformer or action game or racing, whatever, just like getting the thing to move on the screen as a result of you pushing the buttons and like pushing quickly does something on the screen, like just that sort of very primitive tactile feeling is already like it's a cheap way of getting something that kind of feels nice to play. And you don't get that stuff with turn-based games in general. And I think generally there's also not that many roguelikes being made at all, regardless of game jams. So I don't think, like, if you look at the amount of roguelikes being developed as a portion of games being developed versus amount of roguelikes being developed for game jams, I don't think it's obvious that the second percentage is smaller than the first one.
Yeah, I think like game jam games are mostly restricted to action games like platformers, shooters and stuff, and puzzle games where they're actually super slow paced puzzle games where you just stare at stuff and try to solve it. And yeah, I now, like, after what Ido said, I think like all the games are like this. There are only action games, super action games, and super boring puzzle games.
You make a good point, Ido. If you look at the 7-day roguelike challenge, that produces, it's grown to about 50 successes a year. And that's bringing people in from outside the normal roguelike community as well as having the regular roguelike crowd. So if you compare that to something like Ludum Dare, where there's numerous a year getting 1,000 successes each time, then roguelikes don't seem to be doing a lot. But I guess I'm surprised that more people that are active in the roguelike community and are very happy to take part in roguelike jams and things aren't taking part in the wider jams and are making roguelikes for these sorts of things. But another thing you're saying about minimalist roguelikes, it's hard to do.
Or
I disagree with you.
It's the opposite. It's easier. It's easier to make something that's like wiggly and dynamic. It's easier to make it like superficially fun.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's a very, very low hanging fruit. And
I think there's
when
also
games you're interested in these very low hanging fruits.
I think there's also with roguelike we often see a sort of a lack of imagination, believing that you have to make NetHack. That you have to have all these big item systems. You have to have, there's this idea, this checklist of things that you need to have, and there's not so much thinking outside the usual dungeon crawler box.
This has like if you look at the 7-day roguelikes, this is kind of like the place where that stuff is improved upon, where you see stuff getting done, like thinking beyond the box and stuff like that.
I mean, even in the 7-day roguelike challenge, there's a lot of it's just a dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of the people doing 7-day roguelikes have never made a game before, so it's really cool that they're able to make a fairly standard roguelike, but it's got all these cool features. It's all features that are normal, but it's really great that they're able to go out and make that. But it is also really great in 7-day roguelikes when you see something completely different.
Or something that just has, it just has to have, one thing that's, interesting in it, right? It doesn't have to be, something that's blowing your mind in its unorthodoxy. It could just be, one thing is totally new in it.
I like the blow my mind stuff. But, it's, even just doing an interesting twist on things is good. Yeah, there's some really weird and out there stuff that's been made, and I think there's a lot of scope to do even more places. It's the place to really push the boundaries of what a roguelike is. To really stretch the definition to its limits and often beyond breaking point, but that's that can still produce very interesting games.
I think roguelikes need to be fairly well balanced, not perfectly, but if it's just instant death or if you can play forever, then neither of those is interesting. And to balance a procedural system like that maybe is more time consuming than an action game or a puzzle game, as you say.
Well, I tried making an easy game for TIGJam, which tried to make an action RPG, and I thought it'd be simple enough to make an easy, clicky game. And my game has been described as terrifying, horrifying, scary, moving, difficult. The other feedback was I laughed and then I cried. So I think I'm just not very good at producing easy games. I agree. When you've got random numbers in the system, finding that sweet spot between being too easy and too hard is quite tricky. Zaga 33 does it very nicely. I presume you did a fair amount of testing on that to get the balance right?
I think I was quite lucky that it ended up balanced.
Okay.
I played it a lot and tested it a lot, but
a lot of jam games don't get tested a lot.
By the very definition of the constricted amount of time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I try, even when I'm jamming, to be playing almost as much as I'm making to just get the feel of it and try and figure out what's the right thing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, not so easy in a 1-hour game jam.
No. Then you just have to run with it and not even test it at all, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But no, in 7 days you actually do have quite a bit of time. There's a lot of time to actually make something properly polished. But people still, as a designer, it's very hard not to think, well, I'll just add this other feature, then I'll do some testing. And there's always more to add.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say anything that's like a day or more has enough time for testing. Like if it's something that's measured in like single-digit hours, then like that would be my bar. Like if it's measured in like a day or more, then that's enough time so that you could have significant amount of playtesting.
Well, one thing that I like to do during game jams that take more than one day is to actually to friends and people that are close to me that I can access through the internet and just send it and say, okay, play it for a few minutes and tell me what you like, what you don't like, or if you notice something that has a problem so I can fix it.
Yeah, it really helps in that respect. If the game that you're making is playable on mobile devices like tablets or phones or like iPods or whatever, because then you can just take it with you. Like what I want to try, which I'm gonna do soon, is we got like weekly game dev meetups here, and I'm gonna try to do like a game jam, like a Tuesday game jam, because Tuesday is the day when we're meeting, like every Tuesday in the evening, and then just have it like publicize this on Twitter so that I cannot back out of it and say, yeah, it's Tuesday game jam. I'm gonna make a jam and then I'm gonna bring it with me on my tablet or whatever into the game dev meetup.
It is much harder with meetups bringing laptops along. It's not easy. If you got a tablet or something, it's much easier, and it's much more social to kind of like share out a tablet.
Yeah, I mean, like netbooks aren't that much bigger than tablets either, but it's like so awkward to just like hand somebody over a netbook and you have like your mouse is connected to it and it's probably connected to power because like laptop batteries start getting shitty like after the first year or so, and whereas with the tablet you just pass it around.
Also, it's a roguelike. You kind of need a laptop with a numpad, things like that.
Yeah. I don't think so, but I'm gonna let this little incursion pass.
Traditionally, one would prefer to have a laptop with a numpad for a roguelike. But yeah, I always just find it kind of, they're quite heavy and stuff. It's just not so easy to show off. They're only visible from one 90-degree angle. It's not like a tablet where you lay it flat on the table. Everyone around the table can have a look and get interested and have a poke. Like with a tablet, if one person's playing, it's quite easy for them to pass it to the next person to play. Whereas with a computer, it's not so much. You get up out your chair and the other person moves in, blah 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 blah.
It's also a lot less dependent on orientation. Like as you said, you can just put like the tablet, slap it right in the middle of the table, and
Don't
then
slap
like
it.
Well, put it gently in the middle of the table and like because it's all touch screen. A lot of the time, it doesn't even matter that much, like which way it's oriented. So you can just like another person can just, slide it in their direction, and they're still like just touching the screen. Where with the laptop, they'll have to like rotate it into their direction, and then the other person has to rotate it again in their direction.
We talked about the 7-day roguelike challenge every year, normally around April time. Ludum, I think they have 3 a year, something like that.
3 or 4.
There's the Global Game Jam.
That's once
is that
a year.
An annual thing, or?
Yeah, it's once a year.
And is there just one of those, or I thought there was?
Well, it's like one of those, but they have like each country organizes their own venues. So it's like one global game jam, but it has like 200 different locations of the global game jam, but they're supposedly all at the same time. Well, one thing I didn't like about the global game jam is just how much bureaucracy it has compared to Ludum Dare. Like you have to like fill out forms at the end to submit it, and you're like submitting it to their special websites, and you have to have like 7 screenshots at least, this and this many pixels, and it's I don't know, it's too much bureaucracy for like today game jams in my opinion, and I'm really happy for the fact that Ludum Dare, which is a lot more casual and friendly, is now like taking its rightful place as like the main game jam, rather than replacing global game jams, which used to hold this place in the past.
I don't like with game jams having. Usually, you have to sign up to their site, and you have to post all these details on the site. I can understand it from their sort of administration perspective, having this sort of interface that players can interact with and search through, etc.
Yeah.
But as a developer,
not really necessary. Yeah.
As a developer, you want to host it on your own site and direct people to your own website, and that way, whenever you update, you're updating in one place. You're not having to make sure that multiple places are updated, etc. It's such a faff and nuisance, and you don't want that for just a quick game jam. So. I prefer it when there's not too many rules and stuff, or not too much overhead to it.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's the word. It's too much overhead with the global game jam.
Yeah, but people like rules for game jams. I like the 0 hour game jam. It doesn't have rules actually. You just when you click the rules section on the website, it just says "fuck rules" in big letters. And people are still asking me, "Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I use that? Can I like make a game later, or can I make a game in 10 hours or 15 hours?" And yeah, so I think like some people actually like to have rules. As you said before, the restrictions are eliciting more productivity. Perhaps this is the case for some people.
I highly doubt the restrictions of bureaucracy are eliciting productivity. It's like, but yeah, it's like good rules are good and bad rules are bad.
Yeah.
And we shall decide by committee which are what. Yeah, I'm just thinking, doing a 1 hour game jam over 10 hours. What are you going to do? Like 6 minutes every hour? That'd be quite interesting, actually. If you had a game jam, it was spread across 60 days, and you're only allowed to do 1 minute of coding each day.
It'll be called a procrastination jam.
Yeah, but a bit like the Vesper 5 of game jams.
Right.
Just to reference in one of Michael's games. But yeah, just thinking of other game jams that people are sort of regularly involved in. TIGJams are pretty often. They're organised in the TIG source forums. We'll include a link to those. Well, there's lots of other game jams here and there, and sort of varying lengths and styles and stuff. And I mean, I usually find out about them through Twitter. I don't know about you guys.
There's Compo Hub, the website, with a timeline, and it's just about game jams. And it just lists game jams that are going on now, that are already ended, and that we have like 6. It says we have 6 game jams going on now simultaneously.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll include a link to that so people can check that out. It's good to know where all this game stuff's going on. I know Reddit has a game jams Reddit thing, which has a bit of information that gets posted there every now and then. I mean, there's so many. There's always something going on. Yeah. Always. It's up to sort of the developer what they will really want to get involved in. But I would encourage anyone listening, give it a go if you haven't. The 7-day roguelike challenge is obviously a great one to be involved in, but some of the much shorter, quickfire ones can be really cool to get involved in, and you can be a lot more experimental with what you want to throw in there. And again, physical meetups, I find they're just so much fun. They really are. I mean, I don't have many geeky friends. I'm always geeky one in any group, so it's a bit weird to be in a room full of programmers who are all as geeky, if not geekier than I. Actually, usually I'm the weird roguelike person. Everyone else is making these cool iPad games and Flash games and stuff, and here's me with my @ symbols. But yeah, physical game jams are really fun. Whether you make something there or not, they're a great social experience. But yeah, that's kind of all I want to bring up on this area. You guys got any other things you want to add?
Nah, we said enough. Like, it's only game jams. We could have made the game.
Yeah. Like
we could have, yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining the show. I'm just going to wrap up.
You should link Glorious Trainwrecks as well.
Glorious Trainwrecks.
Yeah.
Crazy 2-hour jams. A lot of fun.
Lots of games. Like, there's a game jam and suddenly games everywhere.
There's a really cool one I saw on that where they started doing one based on a spam post that they had. I was just, I thought it was quite amusing that, a spam post leaked through their filter, and they decided, actually, we could probably make games on this. Let's make a game based on this spam post that we've had, and people did. It's cool how people would just go with any crazy idea. Really, it's so much based on fun. It's like, let's not take this too seriously. Let's see what weird things, and yet at the end of it, you can actually get some quite compelling stuff coming out. I remember after the Molyjam, being amazed at some of the really different and inventive things that people had made based on the tweets of a parody Twitter account. But yes, I'm not entirely sure what our next topic of discussion will be on the podcast, but do tune in to find out. Meanwhile, thank you all for listening, and thank you guys for joining us on the show. We'll say good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
And happy jamming, folks.